Hello, all you patrons. Welcome to another pre-show. Gather round.
Yeah, gather round indeed. This looks like an Age of Aquarius costume party. Vinny, look. I mean, the girl over there, she's obviously dressed like Melanie, with that calico dress, and this guy, paisley shirt, tie-dye jeans. You know what it is? They're taking the 55th anniversary of the human being as an excuse to turn the pre-show into some weird '60s fancy dress party.
That's such a
I
clever name. Human being.
the human being 55 years ago yesterday.
I love that. Were you at the human being? And if so, why not?
No, well, I wasn't because I was 6 years old, and my parents should probably not have allowed me to go up to San Francisco by myself. They would have had I didn't know Thelma at that point, so I wouldn't have had a guardian to help me on the bus up
Oh,
there.
right, yeah.
The, but no, I did see it on television though. I remember that very clearly. It was big news in LA.
What were they? Oh, you mean like the news? I mean, it wasn't actually like a show or something, right? Or
No, it wasn't an organized thing, but it certainly made the news, and we saw it down in LA.
I say.
Yeah, I remember back then the rivalry between LA and San Francisco was, if anything, stronger than it is now. I think because LA so completely outstripped San Francisco in subsequent years, Angelinos don't really think of themselves anymore as being in competition with San Francisco. But they did then.
What do you mean outstripped?
Well, I mean, LA got so big,
Yeah.
and it acquired. Let's put it this way: we came out to LA, we came out to Hollywood. Uh, if you really wanted good theater, uh, good classical music, good cultural stuff, you went to San Francisco for the weekend.
Hmm.
I mean, LA, we had the movies, we had some good restaurants, but nothing like the fine dining that was available in San Francisco. So if you were a real culture vulture, that you know, one weekend a month, if you could afford it, you'd run up to San Francisco. And then of course the whole countercultural thing started, and the real action was up in San Francisco at the Haight and in Berkeley. Although God knows there are a lot of hippies in Hollywood, but it just wasn't the same thing. So back in those days, we Angelinos definitely had a chip on their shoulder about San Francisco. But in the subsequent years, we've acquired all that stuff. You know, LA really became a world class city in terms of culture and cuisine and so on. Although San Franciscans, I'm sure, will bristle at that remark. And they still, if there's anything they hate, it's San Francisco being called Frisco. They hate that. It's the city,
The city?
the city.
Whatever.
You sound like a very parochial Angelino in that remark. I want you to say that you completely respect San Francisco's aspirations to retain cultural supremacy within the Golden State.
No. All right.
Well, it takes care of that
I'm not.
issue, I
I'm
guess.
not going to say that.
I guess that took care of that issue. Well, look, if there's anybody here, if there's anybody watching from San Francisco or the Bay Area as a whole, let me tell you, you have my complete sympathy and understanding. My boss doesn't share that sympathy and understanding,
No.
but if you're a patron, he'll pretend.
Wow. Wow,
What?
Charles.
I just thought I'd get that out there. Well, we don't want to we don't want to lose money over your refusal to accept the Bay Area for what it is.
Oh, yeah.
So I would rather they come away with a false impression that you care and keep paying than that they understand the truth and cut us off.
Well, that's very true. That's very true.
See?
Yeah. All right.
I have this stuff in mind. I should say one other thing though, and that is my favorite part of California is not actually either the Bay Area or LA. although I do prefer the Bay Area, to be honest with you. Though I haven't been there in a while, they tell me that the homeless problem is even worse than in LA. But no, my favorite part of California is the Big Sur coast and up to and including the Monterey Peninsula, where your brother used to live.
Yeah.
And in truth, if I had to live in California, on the one hand, but could live anywhere in California I wanted to, it would definitely be the Bay Area, not the Bay Area, the Monterey Peninsula, Carmel or Pacific Grove.
Yeah.
PG, yeah.
They don't say that. They definitely don't say that.
Say what?
PG.
They do call it PG. They don't have the same blissed out expression that I just gave you, but they call it PG. Ask your brother. Don't believe me. He lived there at Love Point.
I know. I was there. I remember it all too well, Charles.
You didn't like it?
Yeah, I know. I liked it. It was very nice. I went there for my honeymoon.
Well, see, did you go to the Monarch Butterfly Preserve?
No, we didn't.
Did you go to the Tech Box?
I did see the tuck. In Carmel, it's crazy. The parking is like literally the worst parking in the world. I wanted to go to the tuck box really badly. Everyone talks about it. I saw
It's
it.
really good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
When you go to Carmel, what you should have done, if I may be so bold, is left the car at the hotel and taken a cab.
Yeah.
Carmel's one of those places you really want to walk around.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good idea next time. Definitely do a cab.
Yeah, I would take as soon as the opportunity offers, take a second honeymoon.
All right.
It's I will say too, before I forget, one of the things I love about driving up Big Sur, apart from its bizarre, wonderful formations and so on, are the 3 outposts, or 4, on the way up to Monterey. When you leave the wonderful Hearst Castle at San Simeon, you first hit Ragged Point, and then Gorda, then Lucia. Then you're in Big Sur proper, the town, and you'll find yourself at a restaurant slash, well, they have a bookstore, but it's called Nepenthe, which is, I love the place. And there you are in Carmel. When you come into Carmel Heights, you see the quaint little general store and gas station. Then you go a bit further, and there's the Carmelite Monastery up on the hill, which is one of my favorite buildings in the world, full stop. Then you come to the Mission.
I just
and then
did.
Beyond.
I actually did that drive for our honeymoon, and I white knuckled the whole drive because, I mean, it's like a several 100-foot drop. You're at the edge of the cliff, and then down is the ocean, and it's like you're on a mountain road that's just like.
Oh yeah, I love that
it's
drive.
not a big road, and it just was so nerve-wracking.
See, I should have been chauffeur. The two of you could have sat in the back.
Wow, I don't know if that would have made it. It just, I wish it wasn't just at the very edge of a cliff, that this winding road. I just wish there was a little bit, I don't know, something else.
Well, you know,
going
and
on
the one
there.
thing worse, you could imagine having me as your chauffeur. Are we having a good time yet, kids?
Ugh. So, yeah, but it's very nice. Obviously the wildlife and the natural part of it is very nice. There's deer all over the place. I really love it. When I went with my parents earlier, we saw wild turkeys.
Yeah,
actually, but we took the inner route from
up
like
the
Salinas
5.
or
Oh,
that
no,
the 5.
the 101. Did
The
you take the
101.
5 or the 101? Because you've got like 3 parallel roads. The one hits the coast.
Yeah.
And then on just the other side of the Santa Lucia Mountains is the 101.
Yeah.
And then beyond that in the Central Valley is the 5. The 5 is the quickest, but the least pleasant.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Enough chit chat. Time for the questions.
All right. Do you accept San Francisco as? Oh no, sorry, never mind. You ask the questions.
Yeah, I ask the questions on this show. All
All
right.
right, fine.
Uh, so first question is from someone with the moniker Miserere Mei Deus, who
Oh,
says, "Hello, Captain Vincent and Officer Clancy's Deputy Charles.
that's me, sir.
I have a question for Charles. What is necessary for a mass to be valid? Because I'd heard Charles say that in prison camps, all that needed to be said for a valid consecration was, quote, 'This is my body and this is my blood.' Uh, However, what about a mass where the priest says, quote, 'shall be shed for you and for all for the forgiveness of sins,' end quote, in contrast to the words of our Lord who said, 'for many'?"
All right. Well, first and foremost, for any sacrament to be valid, you have to have three things: proper form, proper intent, or valid form, valid intention, and valid matter. Form, matter, and intention have to be valid. Well, what does this mean in terms of the Eucharist? Well, the matter is bread and wine. So you can't do it with Coke and tortillas. The intention is actually quite vague. You just have to want to do what the church wants to do. It doesn't have to be even an explicit belief in transubstantiation. Now, you may wonder why that is, and the reason is that starting with baptism, where a non-Catholic can do it, he just wants to do what those Catholics think they're doing when they do it. That's how important it is to have valid sacraments. The third is the form. The essential form, at least judging by the way the church actually does things, is simply, this is my body, this is my blood. Now, what you refer to, of course, is the mistranslation of the Mass in the first version of the Novus Ordo in English, which continues in many other languages, including German. The big question was whether or not for many / for all was part of the essential form of the Mass. There has never, to my knowledge, been an explicit declaration in that regard, but the church has permitted, as I say, priests in prison camps to get away with, this is my body, this is my blood, as the whole of the Mass. Now, that being said, some theologians, including, I believe, St. Thomas Aquinas, have argued the other way. They've argued that, in fact, it is part of the essential form. And if that were the case, then you could make the argument that saying for all might invalidate the consecration of the wine. Now, of course, that wouldn't affect the consecration of the bread. But then there's your question, can you have the one without the other? Well, one thing we know is that when people have, the old story, which has actually occurred, of a priest ex-priest going cuckoo and consecrating a bakery, they bought them all up and eaten them, the bread, I mean. So let's just say it's an area that I myself would go along with what the church has actually done in lieu of any real authoritative pronouncements on the specific point. I can understand, though, why people would want to follow St. Thomas or other theologians in this area. I don't think they're correct, but I don't have the authority to say that. They're to say that they're heretical or flat out wrong. What I can say is that the laity should not have been stuck with this problem. And one of the things I'm most extremely grateful to Benedict XVI for was ramrodding through eliminating that problem in the new translation of the Mass in English. It's interesting that on that point, a number of the bishops resisted, precisely because they said it would look as though the trads were correct.
Oh.
I'm not kidding.
Oh, no.
Yes. One of these objectors, and the meeting, by the way, was at our very own hotel downtown, the Biltmore. And guess who one of the leading objectors was?
Cardinal Mahoney.
Of course.
It's not hard to guess that one.
No, I wouldn't think so. Interestingly enough, the German bishops put up a big fight, and they were able to delay the promulgation of their new missal until Benedict resigned and Papa Francesco absorbed the throne. Now, of course, they've been able to keep saying "für alle" without any problem.
Wait, for other?
"Für alle," it's German for all.
Oh. Oh, well.
In the French, incidentally, it was always the more correct translation, "pour la multitude," rather than "pour tout."
Okay.
But yeah, when I think about this stuff, there's so many clerics I'd like to bang around. You know, just kick them, smack them, take a baseball bat upside their head. Yep. It's really annoying.
I know. All right. Question from Youssef.
Call them on their Grindr accounts. Ask them what the deal is. You knew that was coming.
I had a certain trepidation there.
New evidence. Why did you do this? Who gave you this number? Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
All right.
I want explanations, and I want them now. Your evidence. Don't ever call me here again. Give me another number, and I'll call you there. No. Oh, then I'll call you on this one. Fine, I'll cancel this account. Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
You know, all that sort of thing, and they still expect to be taken seriously. It's hard. You know, and of course, one wants to respect the office, but of course, how much do they respect the office?
I feel like it's like I don't know. For some reason, I'm reminded of the Clintons, where like there's there's so much scandal that I think like the intention is the scandal doesn't like you're just used to trudging through the sewer, and it's like normal, you know, like it's not new, and so you just approach everything else normal because the scandal is normal. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But you lose the sense of outrage after a while.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, so what? All right, well, let's move along. Yeah. Move along. Nothing to see here. The Grindr account's been canceled. Move along. Nothing to see.
Question from Youssef, who says, what era did the state in the West start taking over public projects such as road, building parks, bridge buildings, etc.?
Well, it depended upon when and where. I mean, don't forget that the Roman Empire, west and east, had done all that and built a network of roads from Britain to Syria that were usable for centuries thereafter, and some of them still. A lot depended on where and the when. In Charlemagne, of course, began doing that sort of thing again, public works. During the feudal days, these were generally farmed out to the local lords. And then in the particularly the 1300s into the 1400s, as the modern state began to emerge, once again, more and more of the stuff began to be done by the kings themselves. The concept of the King's Highway began to be developed, I guess, in the 1400s. And you had it in France and Spain and Germany and the British Isles, Britain in particular, the King's Highway. And then it was the idea that you have a longer stretch of road so that royal messengers can travel from the capital or wherever the king is all the way through the realm. And there are certain designated roads where every so many miles there'll be an inn or a stables or something that always has horses for the king's messengers, so they can go, and then starting in the 16th century, you began to have the emergence of a regular post office, again by royal messages, and the stagecoaches came into existence at that time. Um, and all of this began to grow more and more and more and develop. So there it is.
Okay. Question from Mason, who says, one quick question about Alexander the Sixth and Savonarola. The current narrative is that Alexander VI was terrible and bad, and I know little about him. Of course, the U.S. is Protestant, so I do feel as if the narrative is anti-papal. What are some facts in Alexander's favor, and what are some sources that support him?
Well, I mean, you've got to look at the period he lived in, and the fact that a lot of things were attributed to him by his enemies were taken at face value. If you look at my book on the popes, you'll see that I line up the two opposing points of view and mention some of their various proponents. His defenders, in English anyway, have included, you can get Giroux's materials toward a history of Alexander VI online. And the infamous, and I mean that literally, Frederick Rolfe, Baron Corvo, wrote the Chronicles of the House of Borgia. Of course, considering Rolfe, he might have had a vested interest, considering what a weird bird he was. Nevertheless, the facts he brings out are worth reading. So it's a very, very complicated issue. About which, as I say, you have two very different schools of thought, and you would almost think they were describing two different men.
This is very similar to the Savonarola thing, where it's like, can't it be both?
Well, they could be, and the same with Savonarola, in that people are very, very complex, and sometimes very good people do terrible things, and very terrible people do good things. Human beings are very bizarre. And that was one of the things, when I was assigned to Judy and Roswell, that they told us in the mothership that we would find human beings were just completely bizarre. And it's true, the longer I've lived here on this planet, the longer I've realized the truth of what they told us in training.
Good. I'm glad you're assimilating well. All right. Question from Lewis.
Acceptance is what it's all about. Acceptance. I don't try to impose upon the people of Earth our views.
Oh, okay. All right. A question from Lewis, who says, "Hello, gentlemen. A belated Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Be interested to hear Charles talk about Jansenism, its historical roots in France and elsewhere, and the extent to which it is a heresy. My understanding is that it's basically an attempt to blend the Calvinist idea of irresistible sovereign grace with Catholic tradition. But I may be mistaken."
No, you're not. I would recommend Bill Biersack and I did a tape on Jansenism years ago, which is easily available on the Tumblr House website. But I would just say that Jansenism basically talked about irresistible grace, and nobody was pure enough. They were very much against the cult of the Sacred Heart. They were very much against frequent communion. It was very grim.
So, yeah, it seems like one of the heresies would actually be the efficacy of the sacrament, because I know at least in one of our local TLMs, they're doing confessions in tandem with Mass, right? Like, people are lined up on the side for confession while Mass is going on. So are these Jansenists really saying that, even if you just, barely received confession like an hour ago, 10 minutes ago, that you're still not worthy to receive the Eucharist? That's a huge strike against, like, the mercy of God, to me,
Well, it is. And in the end, there were 5 propositions which are condemned. And these are they. Some commandments of God are impossible even for the just, for the grace which would make them possible is lacking. 2, in the state of fallen nature, we can never resist an interior grace. So they attach free will. 3, to merit or demerit in the state of fallen nature, a man does not need freedom from necessity. Freedom from coercion suffices. 4, the semi-Pelagians taught the necessity of interior prevenient grace for every action, even from the beginning of faith. They were heretics inasmuch as they considered grace to be such that the human will can either cooperate with it or refuse to do so. So basically, they condemn once more free will. And lastly, it is a semi-Pelagian error to assert that Christ died and shed his blood for all men. So they believe he died only for the elect, in other words.
Wow. Yeah, well, it reminds me of Moses too, because didn't Moses get sort of denied seeing the promised land because he believed that the people weren't really worthy? They're weak people. And I'm not sure about that. I for some reason I thought I heard that somewhere, because like he didn't make it.
He didn't make it. He didn't make it because he was not sufficiently strong to get the people of Israel to do the right thing. So he paid a price for it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so
the price was he never saw. He only saw the Holy Land from afar off.
Interesting. Okay. So I was wrong then. So it's like he didn't say something about them not deserving it or something like that.
Well, he did.
Oh, he did.
But that wasn't why he was punished.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. All right. Another question from Lewis, who says, "Does Charles think there is any merit in this quasi-Calvinist line of thought that emphasizes the absolute power and sovereignty of God as the final determinant of our salvation? Personally, I do find the idea that our fate is ultimately in God's hands comforting and compelling, but also think it can be reconciled with the Catholic sacraments and devotions in the right context. Thanks and God bless."
Well, I mean, you come to the relationship between divine providence and free will is precisely the issue that so many people go crazy over. And it's not something that can actually be answered definitively. That's why when the Jesuits and Dominicans argued over it, the Pope eventually silenced them both. What we know is that God is, in fact, completely sovereign, and we know that man is completely free. Now, reconciling those two things is very difficult. But in the end, God will not force anyone to be saved. He years ago when I was a kid, an atheist said to me, "Can God build a rock? If your God is almighty, can he build a rock so heavy he himself can't lift it?" Which is an old atheist jibe. And it immediately hit me when he said that. I said, yeah, that's exactly right. It's called free will. He can't lift your will unless you allow him to.
What do you say to that?
He looked annoyed.
Oh.
I felt bad.
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't. I didn't feel bad at all. I felt very happy that he shut up. Stopped his jibing.
All right.
I'm not always nice, despite what everyone thinks. I'm not always a nice person.
All right.
I know it's hard for you to believe, because you've known me so long, and all you've ever seen is the dear old nice Charles. I know that. And I know it's hard for you to conceive of me having a snarky, snarly element to me. I know that. I
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
But trust me, young man, sometimes it does come out. It's true.
Yeah. Well, it's as they say, it takes a saint to live with a saint. All right.
Try to figure if that comes out to a compliment or an insult. This is going to take a little bit of thinking on my part. I'm not quite sure where we're going with that. Let's see.
All right.
I've added 2 and 2 and come up with 28.
I've added 2 and 2 and come up with 22.
Oh.
All right. William says, final question for the pre-show. William says, would Charles please explain how and why the Kingdom of Hungary fell during the Battle of Mohawks against the Ottoman Turks? A few decades earlier, they had a golden age under the rule of King Matthias Corvinus of the Hunyadi dynasty.
Well, that's true. But they had a very young king. They had a lot of dissension, partly for religious, partly for other reasons, amongst the great nobility of Hungary. They were very divided. And when the king died without a direct heir at the Battle of Mohacs, and a lot of his top nobility, all of that weakness was exposed to the Turks. And of course, his next Louis II, that was the king of Hungary who died. His next heirs were the Habsburgs. So, a lot of the Hungarian nobility did not want to serve the Habsburgs. A lot of them did, but that kind of division just opened the road for the Turk. So they took Budapest, they took Schleswig, which was the capital, Székesfehérvár, and basically what was left of Free Hungary was just a strip of land that the Austrians were able to maintain, which is why the Hungarian capital moved from where it was to what is now Pressburg, Poson, or as you would call it, Bratislava. And that's why from that time until the coronation of Franz Josef in 1867, the Hungarian kings were crowned at Bratislava, in the Hungarian coronation church in Bratislava. But of course, I always like to tease Hungarian friends and call it the Slovak coronation church.
I love your pronunciation of Bratislava.
Bratislava! Well, I'm around Slovaks all the time now. So it gives me more people to tease. I mean, let me rephrase. What I meant was, no, seriously, I've gotten to know Slovak customs and lore and all that a lot better than I did before.
All right, that's it for the pre-show, everyone. But stay tuned. A lot more excellent questions on the main episode.
You betcha. And a lot more reliving that glorious time over half a century ago when the moon was in the 7th house and Jupiter aligned with Mars, when peace reigned throughout the planets and love steered the stars. You know what it was? It was the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And notice, Paisley tie. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This guy's wearing it as a shirt, but I got the tie as my quiet tribute to the period that you all have dressed up as.
Excellent. All right. See you soon.
Be good.